Hi, hello, welcome again to Business Immigration Online. This presentation is about the Q and I visas. Q visas are intended for cultural exchange between the US and other countries, and it's always based on an approved program by USCIS in order to bring people on that visa. The visa does have some overlap with other visas that we talked about briefly in some categories of the J1, for example, and the P3 that is also has a cultural component to it, but it focuses more on the artistic side, while this one might be focusing more on lecturing and teaching and providing kind of guided exposure to different cultures. Um, there is no LCA requirement, but there's definitely a requirement for attestation by the employer that treatment to the foreign national will be equal to what is offered to similarly situated U.S. workers, and vice versa. So there is no attempt to make the condition of U.S. workers less favorable by bringing people from abroad. What does these provisions for these visas this visa in general intend to assure that really this is for exposure to the public? It's not something that is done in some private house somewhere. This is why it has to be in a public place where the public has access to and can actually benefit from the program. Um, the culturally unique program is something that is part of the P3 visa, but really, when USCIS looks at the program, it has to have certain characteristic that will make it really identifiable and secure a certain niche that can actually be of some interest and some uniqueness to the US public. They also an attempt by the regulation to make sure that the beneficiary is able to perform the duties and communicate with the audience. So it's not enough that someone knows the culture of their own country. They must be able to communicate. They must know English usually to a certain degree, and must be able to present and communicate their culture to the audiences here. Otherwise, of course, this visa misses the point. I-Visas is for representative of foreign press, information media, and media companies. This include, in certain situations, representatives of tourist bureau, whether public by the governmental or private. It generally requires journalistic credentials for the media. So a person must be accredited by their own country's journalistic association, or the government has a journalist credentials in order to be a candidate for this visa. Admission on the I visa is for duration of status. It can be very long. There is no limit on the number of renewals. So representatives from certain media can be here for years and years and years on that visa. Um, the home office of the employer, this is important, must be overseas, outside of the country. So um, the New York Times, for example, is not able to hire a foreign national on an I visa. Why? Because their headquarters is in the US. So they have to find some other visa. This is for specifically for organization whose headquarter is outside of the United States. They may have a U.S. office, but their headquarter, where it's generally where it's published, would be outside of the United States, because this is for representative of foreign media. That's the meaning of the word. Um, the visa is usable by a representative of organization disseminating technical or industry data as well, as long as they have some credentials. Um, the beneficiary might be an employee or a freelancer of the instrument of the media that sent him here. but has to have credentials and a contract with that particular media outlet to evidence the relationship. There's no petition required, so a person can go directly to the consulate with the appropriate documentation and apply for the visa. There is no residence abroad required. Um, and the visa, like some others that we've seen, is based on reciprocity. So a country that does not accord U.S. journalists a similar condition will not be able to send people on I visa to the United States. And again, there is no limit on the number of extension or duration of stay. So that's the I visa is not terribly common, but it's you see it from time to time. Um, and the same goes to the Q visa, which is somewhat less utilized or um, less common than some other visas that we've seen, but they're definitely out there. And they are employment visas in a sense that they are allowed to those beneficiary on those visas to be paid in the United States and perform employment, uh, even though specific to the field and purposes of the visa.